Science. Everyone, nearly everyone, perceives science as being truth. So if something is called scientific, it must be true because it's called scientific. No, not at all. You must remember that God warned us that in the end days they shall gather together many teachers to tell them what their itching ears want to hear. And that's going to be lies. Now, there's two types of science, like there's two types of wisdom. There's man's wisdom and there's God's wisdom. And obviously, God's wisdom is the greater. We will listen to anything, which is why we buy things that we don't want, because someone has cleverly talked us into it using linguistic acrobatics. And the Bible tells you about people who work out clever ways to separate you from your money. And it's not just selling you things, it's also stitching you up. But let's move on to the science part here. Two aspects of science. One is a scientific fact. And the other aspect of science is also a scientific fact. That's a deception. Science, you have to look at it as what it really is. If it's something that is proven, it is a scientific fact. If it's something that is not proven, it's a scientific hypothesis. It doesn't mean it exists. It's a scientific fantasy. One is science fact, real science fact, and one is science fiction. But everyone's mind associates science fiction with Hollywood. And that's how you're supposed to think. But if you rethink how science works, there's proven science, which is the real science fact. And there's science fiction. There's hypothetical science, which is not proven. And most of it actually can never be proven because it's based on a ridiculous structure. Let me give you an example here. And this also applies to the theory of evolution and the Big Bang and Einstein's theory about curving space, that you could perhaps fold space before you so that you could travel at warp drive. Okay? Space doesn't exist, so there's nothing there to fold. But anyway, here's a scientific analogy, which is actually a scientific fact, because it works. We'll take it apart in a minute, but it's very silly. There's a box. You are inside the box. There is no way out of the box. All you have in this box is a mirror and a pencil. Those are your only tools to get out of this box. So how do you get out of the box using a mirror and a pencil? Well, you look in the mirror, you see what you saw. You take the saw, you cut the pencil in half, two halves make a hole, and you crawl out of the hole. There you go. That's a scientific fact. Because it seems to work. Just like folding space before you. Until you realise, of course, that space consists of nothing. Until you realise, of course, that you're in this box. You need to examine this matter. Hold on a minute. Is this box see-through? Otherwise I couldn't see in the mirror. So I have to presume that the box is see-through. Therefore, that's how I looked in the mirror. Okay, fine. So you looked in the mirror now because there's light enabling you to see in the mirror. You've got that part correct so far. And you look in the mirror and you see what you saw. And you take the saw and you cut the pencil in half. And two halves make a whole and you're free. Now go back a bit more, yeah? And of course you realise that you see what you saw. How can you take what you saw and cut a pencil in half in it? Then you could start being even more ridiculous and say, well, I could break the pencil in half then and two halves make a whole, and there you go, I'm out. Well, two halves make a whole, but that whole is spelt W-H-O-L-E, not H-O-L-E, is it? And this is how these scientific theories are structured. They seem to skip a basic fundamental facts and then carry on hypothesizing as they go. And they are called a scientific fact, and they are called science. And what I just told you about the box, the mirror and the pencil is science. It's also ridiculous, as is any science which fails to comprehend the basic facts, such as space does not exist. There's nothing there, which is why things can exist in space, and using the word in still doesn't actually comprehend to what it is, because there's nothing there. So you can't fold it, so you can't ever have this incredible warp drive where you could fold space in front of you. And have you ever looked up into the sky and seen how big space is? You're going to fold it, yeah, okay. It doesn't exist, you can't do it. You'd have more chance of folding water or folding air. Breathe in, you can feel air, it's there. Space, there's nothing there at all. So, same applies for the Big Bang. There was nothing there. It couldn't possibly have happened. All the aspects from that point are completely irrelevant. The same thing applies for evolution. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous theory that people want you to believe. And these are the teachers that are gathered to tell people what their itching ears want to hear. And what they want to hear is that there isn't a God. But they know that there is. But they want to hear that there isn't. And they want to hear proof that there isn't, because they know that they cannot defeat him. And so they will use science. Two types of science, like I said. And that's the end of the matter. It's not open for debate. The theory of evolution is dead. Brown bread, mate, as they say in London. So is the Big Bang theory. So is the theory of folding space. So are most of these theories that you are fed. They are a lie. Whenever you hear one of these ridiculous theories, take it apart in the same way as the box, the mirror and the pencil, and you will find that it cannot possibly stand, and that you are having a conversation with someone, a worthless conversation with someone, concerning something that cannot possibly be